Welcome to That Guy's a Maniac, the podcast that brings you mediocre content from the masterminds behind That Guy's a Maniac.
Wow, come on, no, listen, say it with feeling, come on. That was like really disheartened. Mediocre.
I wasn't disheartened, but as I was talking, I could see the paths of where I could go in front of me, and then I left it too late to make a decision, and then just kind of careened off into the middle.
Okay, as the old Buffy musical episode would say, one more time with feeling. Come on, you can do it.
Are we allowed to talk about Buffy anymore? Wasn't that cancelled?
Well, it's cancel culture, but we still like Buffy and the actors. We're allowed to like the actors.
Whoa,
we hated Joss Whedon anyway.
Outing yourself there. Anyway, okay. Welcome to That Guy's a Maniac podcast. The masterminds behind the second best video game blog on the internet, That Guy's a Maniac, at www.thatguys.co.uk. You are joined by me, Kanzi11, and my wonderful heterosexual life partner, Richie. Say hello, Richie.
Hello.
Now, where could you find our stuff?
Well, you can find all of our ramblings from 2004 onwards on www.thatguys.co.uk. You can also find us on the socials at That Guy's a Maniac, all one word, lowercase.
I hope, I don't know, if there are people jumping in to listen to the podcast of this episode who genuinely believe that we think that we're advising people to search all one word, lowercase, like we're that out of touch. I mean, we're getting there.
Yeah, running jokes, do they work for podcasts? You know, you actually, it's almost like you have to sort of say to the readers that they have to listen to every single episode.
Yeah, and like how far in do you get to the podcast? Like we've just done, without actually saying what the podcast is about. So this podcast is about video games, ladies and gentlemen. But we couldn't just bring you this content for free.
No, we could not. We need the backing of wonderful sponsors. And this week, one of those sponsors is Ultranet, for all your future warehouse battle tank robot needs. Ultranet.
Thanks, Ultranet. I really want to say Ultratech then, twice. Okay. Different sponsor, different podcast. They've not sponsored us this week. No thank you, Ultratech. Now this week, Richie, we are polishing our crystal balls. And we are taking... we're scrying some knuckle bones. We're reading our tea leaves. And we're going to have a look at the future of games. And have a think about where games may be going. We are lucky enough to have been around when games really started kicking off. And so we've kind of lived the history of games. And I think it's quite difficult sometimes to kind of chart how we got from when we started to where we are today. Because a lot of those changes have been incremental. And sometimes you can find games today which aren't that different from the ones we were playing on whatever the Game & Watch.
No, they're just remastered versions of the ones we were playing.
Yeah, it's slightly nicer graphics and better sounds. So to kick us off, Richie, imagine a 15-year younger you. You are sat playing Code Veronica.
Yeah,
on the PlayStation,
amongst other
Dreamcast?
things. Yeah, I think PlayStation 2 around that time. Maybe it was just the dawn of the event of the 360 and that generation of consoles.
Yeah. So exciting time in games.
Yeah.
Where, if you can remember, where did you imagine we might be in the 2020s or the future of games?
Well, I mean, thinking back to those times and like the transition from PS2 to 360, I think the biggest advent that came with the 360 was the was it online play. So I think that generation from what was PS2. Yes, don't get me wrong, I know it had online play and it had like the modem that was plugged in, and of course you had the what's it called, the Dreamcast, which had the 14.4 modem and shit like that. But you understand what I mean when it sort of comes.
Yeah. I mean,
with the 360, it had an Ethernet port. It was meant for online. It have that potential.
In the UK, I mean, this is turning a little bit into a history lesson, but the Dreamcast was kind of amazing for its online capabilities. And my brother had a lot of fun playing like Phantasy Star Online. I'm not convinced in the UK that you could ever play the PlayStation 2 online. Because the games would come with it, and it had the little network play symbol. I remember it's like a sideways figure 8.
Twisted Metal Black was the only one I can remember of.
I think Medal of Honor Rising is the one that jumps to mind for me. There are a whole bunch of them. But of all of our friends, and of course PlayStation 2 is huge, I don't think I know a single person who ever played online using their PlayStation 2.
No, I think where the 360 sort of changed was like, it was actually the advent. Oh god, if I say the word advent one more fucking time.
Drink.
yeah, drink. It was the start of the Genesis.
Richie, what's that CG Final Fantasy film?
Oh god, I don't know. Spirits Within?
No, the good one.
Fuck off. And you just killed my train of thought.
I know, it was lovely. It's perfectly timed. I could see you were on the cusp of a thought. It was coming out.
Right, yeah, fucking 360, PS3. Yeah. That was the start. Boom. Where you would get digital downloads. So it was actually the transition. Oh god, that's another word I'm going to use a lot. From physical media to digital media. It was finally starting to happen. So you were downloading games.
I remember it more for online play, and just being really blown away on as we were playing on Emergence Day when Gears of War came out, and it was just so exciting to be wow, just you click this button and then you're just online and 10-year-olds.
Famously we did that Halo 3 one as well.
We did, yeah. Famously is a stretch, but we did.
Yeah.
I don't think that's recorded in the annals of the history of gaming. That guy's played that one round of Halo 3, and that was the exciting bit. But I don't. For me, I don't know. Digital download wasn't a part of that till much later. Do you remember what your first digital download was? The first game you digitally downloaded on a console? Let's say on a console.
Well, I mean, they had all of these little trashy, sort of shitty ones, like the Domino's, not Domino's, Doritos, yeah, Double Dash or whatever.
Shout out to the game neither of us can remember the name of every episode.
I know. It's like, but yeah,
Doritos
you had loads
Double
of
Dash?
stuff like that. Doritos Double Dash, but like, it wasn't just that. There was like, you could buy stuff for your avatar as well. So there was definitely a digital presence, or more of it in that sort of fashion. But yeah, of course, like the games as well. Like you had a whole ton of them. Like they started even bringing out the platinum ones towards the end that you would just be able to play the whole game on, a digital download. So like, I think I bought Viva Pinata: Trouble in Paradise, which was a great game. Except I fucked up the whole Chopcladocus thing. And why has that not been remastered? Why is there no Viva Pinata?
I know.
It's a fucking outrage. But anyway, it's fucking outrage.
It is.
Hot take, Richie. Hot take.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you say. Right? Whenever Viva Pinata comes up, the trajectory of that story is it was actually really good because nobody believed you if you're just saying, oh yeah, Viva Pinata was really good. And the next thing to say is, where's the remake of that?
Yeah. And why has it not been taken apart and turned into a mobile game with microtransactions? You know, that's the sort of shit.
You want your Viva Pinata gacha game to go along with your Capcom gacha and your Sega gacha.
Fuck off. I hope. Really? Right. Man. You need to play that game.
I'm not into gachas. Anyway, excited about downloads and 360s.
Yes. So, like, that was probably the biggest move from that generation to the next generation. So there was that sort of intermediate period, but of course, online play had been rife on the PC platform as well.
Like a disease.
Yeah, well, I mean, it fucking was. I
Riddled.
mean, online play, like, when you came to sort of like, even just LAN games and things like that, you had your Dooms and Duke Nukem's, and it had been going for quite some time. But of course, at that same time, there was the MMOs, there was your Final Fantasy XIs, there was World of Warcraft, there was your EverQuests, your all sorts of those ones, and they were very, very much online play, and the PC was the main place to do that. And then when 360 PS3 came out, that was when consoles started moving into that sort of online genre. But of course, the games were always massively different. Like, there was the argument of keyboard versus mouse versus playing on a controller, before you would even have like games that were on multiple platforms, you know. Yeah. Like that is what 2005 was like, you know. You would be able to play, like, don't get me wrong, like 99% of the games that you got on the 360, sorry, in fact, let's go back a generation, on the Xbox and the PS2, you would be able to get either game for either platform. There was very few version exclusives, given the massive catalogue they both had. But then on the PC, there was usually something that was exclusive there. And nowadays, we are going to be... It's hard to see something that isn't released on all platforms immediately, you know?
Like, yeah, you'd see, you know, when you see the ad, you get like the 20 little logos at the bottom for every device and store that it's on.
Yeah, exactly. But the main ones being, of course, you know, the latest Xbox, the latest PS device, and the latest PC device. And now, you know, it's just sort of it's a done thing to have all of them. And of course the Switch as well. Although it doesn't get as much love for the multi-platform.
No,
I think
it doesn't.
It is an underpowered device compared to the other things, but again, you could argue that they're just stupidly overpowered for no good reason. But yeah,
I know. I don't begrudge the fact that people do enjoy it, but I have absolutely no time for you know, the stuff that websites like Digital Foundry do. You know, which is screen, you know, playing the versions on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation and Xbox One or whatever side by side to see the differences.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think it's cool that those guys do that kind of thing. But I, you know, with my own kind of nuances and issues with how I enjoy gaming, to be one of those guys to be like, well, I can't, you know, if whatever the version of, think of a game, the latest Doom looks, you know, runs slightly better on the Xbox Series EX2 or whatever they're on, then it means I'm just gonna have to destroy my PlayStation 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there will be people out there who will be like, oh, you know what, I'm going to get it for the PS5 because, you know, this website has reviewed it side by side and it shows that this one's actually got, you know, 1 frame faster per second. Like, oh god. Billy Big Balls with all these devices so they can get that extra frame per second and never notice it.
To play a single player game.
Yeah, exactly. You know. But yeah, we are dwelling very, very much in the past for...
It's true, let's put on our future goggles.
So, I want to just quickly talk about what I actually thought the future of gaming was back then. Because I had this theory for a long time about how it was no longer going to be about consoles, PCs. It was actually going to be about the platforms. And I suppose a good example of how this is sort of starting to look nowadays is the fact that you have different stores which have different content, specifically on the PC. So you have your Steam store, you have the Epic store, and you have GOG for your classic games. So you do have these almost different platforms. But what I was thinking was the evolution of that would perhaps have been a game where you play these other games. So more like, imagine Steam had a lobby and that was the game itself, but you were able to go and play, not like a virtual arcade version of them, but you would sort of be able to play different games from this lobby. Does this make sense?
Are you describing PlayStation Home?
Well, this was PlayStation Home. I get what you're saying. No, I know that digital thing where like people would get into lobbies and you
walk around in your generic-looking avatar, and then
potentially hold hands and go off and play a game together.
Yeah.
No, what I was meaning more that the games were integrated with this platform.
Right.
It's very, very hard for me to get this across, but yes,
is it like
PlayStation Home was definitely an inspiration for this idea. Yeah.
Is it like Wreck-It Ralph when they're all in the lobby?
It's more like Wreck-It Ralph than it is PlayStation Home. That's a really good way of thinking of it, actually.
Okay.
That sort of, that middle world sort of thing. But I also I wanted the games to be a bit more dynamic. I always thought that the idea of a game, the core of the game, the core value of a game could be transposed onto other things. You've heard this rant on here from me before, never mind in face-to-face. But like, there is so much that can transpose a game, you know, like to go back to my original idea of what it could have been, or where we could be, or where we could be going to.
Yeah, come on, lay it on us.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong, we are getting closer to this, but my original idea was that we could be somehow integrated with a sort of digital version, and like, let's just take the UK as an example here, like almost like a digital version of the UK where you have your avatar, and because there is so much going on, and I think this is also the advent of Google Maps which made me think this as well, that there would and could be...
Advent again.
Sorry?
You said Advent again.
Oh god. This was the genesis of Google Maps.
Because that sounds like a natural sentence. Yeah.
But yeah, I like the idea that perhaps you could have a digital version of the place where you live, or the city you live in, or the local area that you have, and transpose a game onto it. So... the more I'm saying this and the more I'm saying this out loud, I realise that, yeah, clearly there's just one too many drinks for a chain. You're just talking
it's pretend no one's listening, like, you know, drop all the pretend. Go back to your 2005.
My 2005 idea was basically you could have core games such as, let's say, Resident Evil. Yeah. And you could go to your digital version of Glasgow.
Yeah.
Or
for
London,
example. Yeah.
And you would be able to run the scenarios of Resident Evil, but in local areas, and everything was sponsored for and paid for in advertising by the local shops.
That's an amazing idea. I mean, the one place that I think we've sort of got there in a really basic, nowhere near as interactive way is obviously things like Pokemon Go, right?
Yeah, I know, it's the AR. It's like, yeah, it's the AR stuff. But my idea was like, I don't know, if like big department stores, let's say Selfridges,
yeah,
if they wanted to pay for advertising, they could actually say, well, we're actually running this full zombie scenario in Selfridges, and if you get up to, home department, there's a special bonus and vouchers. It's like, wow, look at this revised digital world where you can actually play this game, play the Resident Evil scenarios, or and it's not just Resident Evil, like things like Assassin's Creed, climb to the top of the shard so you can get a view of the whole of London,
or like Burnout Paradise, right? Jump in a car, and then all of a sudden you're doing a racing around down Oxford Street.
And especially if you even go local, how great would it be to, around your suburban neighbourhood, be able to do Burnout Paradise? Like, it doesn't even matter. It'd just be so cool to have that that ability to be there, and even if it's residential, whatever, it's just like, that's cool. And being able to put yourself all around the world and like creating little hubs and things like that, I thought was like the way to do it. And even MMOs or racing is a really, really good genre to have in there. But like, could you imagine like even just like a platformer? How cool that would be to like being able to jump up and down along the side of buildings. HMV, show my age. HMV stores.
One price. You could run up a Woolworths.
Yeah. Or indeed, like Pokemon Go had that deal with McDonald's as well, that every McDonald's restaurant gets its own Pokestop. In exactly the same way as like, you go to every McDonald's and there is a new scenario, or there's a McDonald's scenario, and you can do stuff in there that perhaps correlates to real life as well.
Now,
and my thought was, why is everybody trying to make a hardware platform? Let's make a software platform, where everything else can feed into that. And of course, it's very, very utopian. Because obviously, how are you going to get, like all the rights of this sort of stuff? It feels very. I'm also saying this now, and it was probably around the same time that you loaned me Ready Player One. As well.
Yeah. And I just love the idea. I love the idea about popping down to your local, whatever, Londis, and being like, listen, do you want to sponsor? We're developing this game, and if you sponsor it, then the Londis will pop up in a whatever zombie survival horror game. And then the franchise owner going, here's 20 quid.
But I mean, it would probably have to be done on a much bigger corporate things where it was like Londis did something,
and then it would turn into the worst. Let's stick with the wonderful fantasy, but it's not very hard to envisage it being a bit like we see in Pokemon Go. Where you've just got horrible corporate, eroding the idea of exploring kind of local areas and celebrate. There's also this small issue of I think it's probably quite a lot of legwork to not only digitally map the entire world to quite a high degree of accuracy.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I was talking about the genesis of Google Maps. 10 years on, I thought maybe perhaps we would be at a point where we're doing a bit more terrain mapping as opposed to, and there are some elements of being able to do that. You can turn Google Maps on its side and you can see the buildings where they are. And
you can also pop into I think the British Museum and places like that, and you actually go indoors and can have a look at around a 360.
So I mean, it's not far off that. It's just apart from how accessible that is as a tool, I decided to turn it into a video game, because that's what I thought. And I always thought it'd be great just to like be able to play, Resident Evil Leicester edition, and like people on the internet would be talking about, oh yeah, you've got to play it in Colchester, man. the Bognor Regis version where you've got the sea monster.
Yeah, there's a really good, or like go to the Hadrian's Wall, and there's some epic campaign there about keeping the zombies out of Scotland.
But because you said that, like, how cool would like the British Museum or the Natural History Museum be as a scenario and a place where you could, and like randomizers already exist for these games, and as long as you can have the set rules of like you've got to find the heart key and the club key and all that sort of stuff, you could get these things to happen. And doing that in the British Museum and actually, I don't know, having fucking zombie velociraptors, finally,
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think as powerful as like randomizers and procedural generation are, that would get those. I think those things are never as engaging as constructed scenarios, because no matter how much you chuck in, you eventually, and here it comes, readers, you eventually see behind the curtain. Okay, it worked.
Phenomenal use of the see behind the curtain.
And then also, I think because obviously video game spaces are quite specifically tailored and built, whereas the real world is it's like so many dead ends, right, and so much dead space. It'd be cool to try, but I think it'd be tricky.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I know it would need a lot of love. It would be the epitome of fucking software. What am I software as a service? It would need to be monitored, constantly looked after. You need to be the biggest corporation. You would need to be a Microsoft or a Sony and have like divisions almost across the UK, or it'd be a massive corporation, and it would be people just GMing, for the entire thing as well.
Yeah. And then they'd obviously have all your data.
Yeah, of course, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, actually, that's a good point. Like GMing, the ability to even do your own games and LARPing and stuff like that as well. That is a really good shout. It's not the idea you had, it's one that you made me have.
Okay.
But yeah, that was my idea of where the future of games would be.
Yeah. Which I think, like you said, is very utopian. And isn't how games have gone.
Mm-mm. So we've seen, I mean, ultimately, do you think we've seen much of an improvement of games, let's say in the past, not 15 years, but 10 years? Once the, you ready for this? The advent of the 360 and online play and things like that. Do you think that we've seen much change?
I think
definitely.
as I alluded to, because we've lived it, with the proverbial frogs in the boiling pan of water and just not noticing things changing. It's really hard, you kind of have that. I lack the language to describe it properly, but when you see a trailer for a new game or an upcoming game.
Do you just to pause on that analogy? Do you feel that perhaps, like, people who are younger than us, maybe say 10 years or younger, actually thought, "Oh wow, how different is the PS3 from the PS4? Oh, the PS4 is amazing."
Yeah, well, I think they could probably see. Maybe they could see the difference a little bit more, or or they've not seen how little difference there's been, I guess. Because what I was going to say was, what was I going to say? You've done me now.
Yes, revenge.
Yeah, it was
1-0. Readers 1-0.
It was right there on the tip of my tongue, and that question has completely subtitled it. I think it's because that jump you mentioned, and we've talked about it before, is the last big jump that I could think. And I think we did when I talked about Dead Rising. that was a, where's this? You can read it on the blog, www.thatguys.co.uk. We were just both really, really disappointed at the difference between next generation and how games journalism and obviously all the console makers try and force you to jump to next gen, right? And everyone's talking about next gen and what's next gen going to bring, and then there's those ridiculous stories about
and don't get me wrong, I generally
75 USB ports and whatever. Oh my god.
I'm generally a big advocate for things being for improving in the next generation. So things do improve, yes, and I'm glad that we have prettier graphics. I'm glad that we now have 4K TVs where you can see a massive difference in the game quality. Great, fantastic. The sound is better, all sorts of things that you do see things improving, and you it does look more curved, and characters start to look more realistic, especially in platforms like PlayStation and Xbox. People are generally playing like these sort of realistic looking, even if they're cartoony, like your Gods of War, cartoonily proportioned, they're still realistic looking, and you want to be able to look them in the face and see the pores, and you're like, wow, look at the dedication that's gone into that. And that's great, it's fantastic, it's wonderful, but still the same fucking game with quick time events, and that's was a little bit disappointment. I mean, I don't know, does God of War even have online interaction in any fashion?
I don't know. If they do, it's probably a Dark Souls type thing. But this is what I meant when you see a trailer and you get super excited about it, and you're thinking about, how would that work? Because it looks like this super realistic. Thinking about things like Watch Dogs, obviously Cyberpunk is a big recent one, and your mind tries to fill that space with, this is going to be the future of gaming or something completely different. And then of course you get it, and then you get familiar with the controls, and then you've got level systems, and then you walk into a warehouse and there's a red barrel,
and then you get your head round the core of the game. This is going back to my shenanigans.
And then for all that improvement in frame rates and graphic fidelity, and I can't remember what game it was, but the first time that you see a poster that's flapping on the wall or something, and you go up to it, you can actually read it as a poster, and it wasn't a pixelated poster. Wow, that's fantastic. But it unfortunately that gives us a few extra capabilities. So like having a big open world game, like populating it with thousands of zombies. But it still feels like we're waiting for like a new model, new way of being. And of course this is really reductive because we tend to think about those big AAA adventure games, right? It's like, what is the future of Tetris?
It's exactly where your brain drifts to.
Rather than like, Tetris Effect is the future of Tetris, and it's absolutely amazing. So it doesn't really need much tweaking, but at its heart you're still sitting there playing Tetris. Definitely with this last generation, again, it might be because we're getting older. I can't even tell the difference, particularly with the consoles, with things being merged, as you like, with cross-platform games, but then also these kind of weird different versions coming out, and it's like, I just, at this stage, it's like, I'd like to play that game. What can I play it on? And I'll, if there's enough things I need to play it on, I'll get the new system. But there isn't it doesn't feel like it felt, I think, when the 360 came out. I'm like, oh my god, if I got that new console, I could be doing this, and this. It's like I could be doing pretty much what I'm doing now, but quicker.
I mean, your argument, I've regressed back to being an entirely PC gamer. I don't own any of the new console systems at all. Even, I still actually have a functioning 360. I think I mentioned this before. And that is the latest console I own. I own, the controllers, the very latest Xbox controllers. And I have two of them because I play games on my PC, which is sitting underneath my telly. So I use it as a console system, and everything is most games that are on the console gaming systems are now available on Steams or Epics or GOGs or whatever your favorite video game platform is for the PC. But that's just what I was saying before. It's like all these storefronts are basically the difference between a 360 and a PS2. Oh God, nowadays,
Yeah, it's just basically launcher is the different console, and it's the software titles where there isn't overlap. And then shout outs for platforms like Itch. With all the indie games, and they kind of are making themselves feel a bit different by having essentially a different catalogue of games, which is essentially what consoles are doing. So to stop us, I guess, talking round and round in circles, dreaming of the wonder time when we leapt to the PlayStation 3 and the 360. I've got a few things just to do. So I want us to think about the future of, and I have the following words. So the future of controllers. Where are controllers going to be? I mean, again, if you look at original PlayStation controller, you can see the origins of it in a PlayStation 4 controller.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's really going to change is the insides of them. Probably a very good example of that is, like I say, I've got the latest versions of the Xbox controllers, and I used to just play with my 360 controllers on my PC, and I thought 360 controllers are fine, except if you remember the sticks had started to sort of wear away, the rubber had become hardened, and it's sort of so I was using these little shower caps instead on top of them. So I replaced them, got some new ones, and when I held it, I was like, oh wow, this is crazy because it's got a tactile feel to it. Yeah. So it's actually got sort of a friction, so it's not smooth. Like, that's really, really cool. The buttons, when you press them, you feel them. I know you feel them regardless, but there is
the controller.
Button
the controller, when you hold it, has a tactile feel, and the button,
you can feel the buttons. As opposed to every other platform where you couldn't feel the buttons.
The future.
Feel the buttons.
I know what you're saying. I do know what you're saying. Yeah.
So, especially the triggers at the left trigger.
Triggers.
Right trigger. Yeah. So they've got a really nice button feel. The D-pad is massively improved, which has already had 3 generations to improve on from the 360 one, which is awful. Yeah. But yeah, it just felt solid, and of course the technology inside it for faster response and all that sort of stuff. I don't see a controller being a massively different thing.
No, we've seen
the only thing I think is a revolution, and we both agree on this, is the split controller of the Switch. The idea of being able to sit down, splay your arms
however the
fuck you want, and you've got all of those controller parts there, and you why is that not on the fucking PC? Why is that not on why is it not on the 360? You make it all cool and triggery or whatever you want to do. But that is a revolution, and it's so comfortable to play like that as well.
Yeah. You can play however you want, and because I was going to say we've had some tweaks and some things have been abandoned with your if you imagine your archetypal joypad, so things with having speakers in them, which was a weird gimmick that
and the
6 games, 6 games took. And then there's also the very strange back touch pad on the PlayStation, which it's just one of those.
Well, yeah.
Just one of those. I think design things where if you remember when the 3DS was launching, the DS was launching, and you had the little hand strap on the hand strap was like a little thing for you to put your thumb behind, so you could rub the screen with your thumb. And those ideas either take off because I don't know if it's because they're good or because developers are lazy, or everyone is like,
I think
most people just like what they like, and I'm not gonna fudge in this weird single platform back touchscreen for a
big ask to ask anyone to learn a new controller. So as you know, I've got a ton of controllers for my PC, including the Steam controller. Now the Steam controller, because it's moving from a keyboard and mouse platform to a controller, it does ingenious things. Like, it has this cool haptic sort of almost mouse pad that you use with your right hand, and it works really well. It's got the triggers, and it's got actually back triggers which you tap as well. They're not like touch pads, and everything about it is such a cool idea. But in practice, what they're asking you to do is relearn everything, learn how to use this controller so that you can play games. And then it's just kind of like, I mean, I could, or because I just want to play a game, I'm just going to use the keyboard and mouse, or if I need to use a controller, I'll use an actual controller. So don't get me wrong, like, that piece of technology is amazing. It's just too big an ask for someone to do it. And like, I get a ton of accessories for the PC as well. I think possibly the most successful one that I have is this is going to be impossible to fucking describe on a fucking podcast, but basically it's a keypad that's for your left hand. It has a D-pad where your thumb is, and it has some buttons around it, but then it also has keyboard key presses, so for your other 4 digits. Does that make sense to you, Farley?
It says it's sort of like a VR controller with keyboard elements on it.
Yeah, it's basically a keyboard element. So you can, when you're playing PC games, it's not too unfamiliar, but instead of having the WASD control mechanism, you actually have a D-pad by your thumb, which is very, very natural for everyone else who plays console games. And it is great. And they're still made, and they are a fantastic fucking thing. But will they take off? No. It's one of these things that is just like, what's wrong with WASD? What's wrong with the mouse and keyboard? There's a fuck ton wrong with the mouse and keyboard. There is. Like, why do people not realise this? There's so much wrong with it. It's not what gaming was made for. It's just you have learned how to use it, and asking anyone to do anything beyond that is really tough. You know,
and I think the reason why kind of controllers come back to, the generic idea of a joypad, sticks are still hanging in, and mouse and keyboard, is because, as you mentioned earlier, we've got things which are more multi-platform, and we don't want people to relearn things. So occasionally we do get ideas like gyro controls. Remember those? I can't even remember when they dropped out. But when your, I think, PlayStation 3 controller was a gyro controller as well.
The Move?
Yeah, absolutely awful. No, the actual joypad itself.
Oh right, okay. Ooh.
So an extra way of controlling would be to kind of move your controller around, and it would.
I did not remember that. That's fucking nuts.
But
I do like that idea, because it's just like when you play racing games and you're like turning the corner, you fucking turn the whole controller to get around that corner.
So I don't think we're going to see any huge innovations there. Although I do, I've not had too much hands-on time. But I wonder if things like the virtual reality controllers, where essentially you've got 2 Wii nunchucks in your hand. But their position in space is part of the controller as well as the thumbsticks and a couple of buttons.
Again, I think that's too much of an ask for people as well. Let's go back to the example of the Switch controller. I much prefer just being able to just sort of lay there. I don't want to have to point at the screen and move around and swing my arms about when I'm playing a video game. I want to be able to be as comfy as possible. Like, don't get me wrong, like, there was games that you could play on the Wii, I remember, and you could sit there quite comfortable, and it was just a matter of flicking your wrist.
Yeah, you get used to, like,
and stuff like that.
There were a generation of grandparents who would get the maximum score on Wii Bowling, and they wouldn't be making a bowling motion. They just sort of, with their hand dangling off the side of the settee, just like a quick because they've got it down exactly. so pat. What to do? Kind of breaking it. Again, you can't fight human beings when you're designing these things. Like, they're gonna try and be as lazy and
yeah, exactly. The Steam controller is a perfectly good example of that. This is the future of gaming. This is what you should use. Yeah, it's too different.
No, I'm going to stick to my device made for typing as my main controller. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. What is the future of multiplayer?
I mean, I don't know. There's games that I will play, which are clearly multiplayer games, which is, your World of Warcraft and stuff like that, and that's fine. I think integration with communities is probably the most important thing. So currently, like, playing World of Warcraft, the biggest part of it is actually just being part of a Discord server with the rest of the guildies. I think that integration will have to happen for the future of multiplayer. That being said, every other fucking game I play, I would rather play solo, because I am just so stuck in my ways about that, Like, I don't mind the ability to have some online interaction or do some trading online, or do, jump in and do some sort of like the Pokemon things and things like that, raiding and stuff like that. Otherwise, I probably will just play every other one of my games that are on my Steam list, and they are just straight up single player games, and I'm happy, because one of the things that I really dislike about that is you are then exposed to a whole world and plethora of people who are like really, really good at the game, and you're just like, I really didn't like it. It's just my first, possibly one of my worst examples of that was playing Gears of War on the 360 and just getting shouted at by somebody whose balls hadn't even dropped yet. Raging because I chainsawed someone.
You were using he's using, and it's a cheap move, and you're a cheat. Which for all of the drama around Gamergate and abuse and blah blah blah, it is still the case, right? You still jump on to many of these competitive multiplayer games.
Yeah, exactly. And again, sorry, I know I'm going to talk about World of Warcraft again, but yeah, because I have this Discord server, it's a little community of people who still talk to each other, and it's fine. But you can jump into that server and you can easily find toxic fuckheads. Like the other day there in World Chat, there was a guy who was just literally talking about, oh god, how COVID isn't really a thing, masks are pointless, and you're just like, oh my god, go away, this is too much reality for World of Warcraft. But yeah, like, and that's the problem, is human beings are arseholes on the internet. So I don't know what you're going to do about online until that gets policed in some fashion. Games are still going to be toxic fucknuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a generational thing, but I'm with you. But part of me is also whenever you see a multiplayer game, which by and large you can't really play single player or as a token single player mode. It's like, give you a couple of years, mate, and unless you're one of the big five, you won't be able to play that game anymore, because support would have dropped, or the sequel would have come out, or there just isn't a player base at all. And although it's irrational because there are hundreds of games which we never touch, let alone go back to, a bit of me is like, I don't want to invest myself in a game that might not be playable in the future. So I do like games
I mean that's so true as well. Yeah,
like Dark Souls, like Pokemon, where it's like, oh cool, there's a little online thing that I can do. It's completely optional, adds a little bit, but I'm not locked into having to play this online.
Who knows what could happen in the future, what happens when the internet dies and we become a Mad Max civilization? Are you still going to be able to trade Pokemon? These are the big questions that we are going to ask on that guy's podcast.
No fuckers playing Fortnite when the electricity runs out. On a slightly different, so that was kind of multiplayer from the player's perspective. In terms of formats, so I think we're sort of at the end of Battle Royale now. And we're now moving into kind of, these Among Us, and what's the other one? Games like Among Us, Overcooked, more kind of online party games.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's I don't think that's a black and white scenario. I'll be honest with you, because I think yes, that is the game of the week. These online sort of interactions, and Among Us still is working as a games as a service. It's still improving. It's got the voice chat whenever you're local and things like that. That's cool. This is nice functionality. I guarantee that in another year's time there will be another battle royale that comes out that people will like. It'll have just something different about it. Maybe they'll eventually do that fucking car destruction derby battle royale that we came up with the idea for. I don't think these things go away. I just think it's, what's the word I'm looking, ebbs and flows. So I don't think it is as binary as gone or we're at the end of. I just think we are maybe creatively exhausted with IM, and we will see it'll reoccur in some fashion.
But I think perhaps the innovation around, or the area of interest, let's say, there's been around multiplayer, is all the tools that come with streaming. And so a lot of the reason why these games have blown up is because you sort of have a community element to it. So you can jump in and play the game with your favourite streamer, and all the tools we've got for sharing them. So on a lot of the consoles, it's a button click away, and then all of a sudden you're live streaming your playthrough of Gun Gal 3 or whatever it might be. So I think games which are geared,
I think you'll find that it's Gal Gun.
Gal Gun. I knew I'd made a mistake. I've never played it personally. True.
Not the third one.
Not the third one. Yeah, that is true. So I think more tools like that, or more games like that, and I don't know, maybe tapping into your 2005 idea. Perhaps we'll see something like virtual stadiums. So you log in as a player and you're there to watch something happen. Or as we say,
things like you were saying there, the Twitch platform as well on the PC is becoming more and more like that. That is almost esports. So you can just see that it is like just teetering on the edge of becoming like a virtual stadium for these sorts of things. It's just, unfortunately, it's still stuck with fucking idiots and chats doing Fs and making fucking frog emojis and being absolute cunts.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, it's true. It's the bane and the boon. Which brings us next nicely onto the future of competitive gaming.
I don't know. I like where competitive gaming is going. I love where esports is, especially for the fighting games. Don't get me wrong. I think the prizes that people get and the venues and all this sort of stuff is way out of control for what it should be. But that being said, it's really quite cool. It's like it's the same with athletes. Athletes. Fucking hell. It's the same with athletes, because there's always going to be that sort of gap of where you're good at the game, and then when your dexterity starts to fail, you're no longer going to be a Twitch gamer. And I don't mean Twitch the platform, I mean as in able to react to frames of animation and things like that on the screen. You will get old and that skill will go away. So they are kind of athletes in that fashion.
Yeah, I mean, there are also athletes in the privilege gap as well, right? So you are not becoming a competitive athlete with all the gear and equipment and club memberships and whatever if you don't have some financial support. And it's exactly, you have to be in a place in your life where you can dedicate 12 hours a day, whatever it is, to get your actions per minute down. But yeah, I think the future's interesting, and this potentially touches on the next topic, because I think the early days of esports were like, let's try and copy other sports, in a way that just didn't work. Pitching it to just everything about it, the way they were run. The way they were kind of commentated on, the way that they tried to fit in with other sports, and the more we've seen them kind of become their own thing. And again, it's been just this quiet revolution, and this drives me insane all the time about video games. We can talk about them being mainstream or not, and if you look at how many people are playing games, it is most people, but it's kind of defiantly won't break through to the mainstream. It's always going to be, it always has that perception of being a weird thing to do, even though most people are doing it. And this came to mind recently because Channel 4 are thinking of rebooting Games Master. And it's like, how relevant is that? You've got the nostalgia effect, but in the day when, in the time when millions of people are watching gaming videos on YouTube, or they are in the Discord servers, or they are watching a streamer, or they are actually playing games, and the best that sort of TV can do, hanging in their TV can do is rework a 30-year-old TV show and make it a bit about, we'll have competitions on some games.
Well, I mean, it depends how they do that. I mean, like, if Games Master was to, tap in and just sort of say, because we're using streaming platforms, this is how we're doing Games Master now. That would be really cool and very different. But with somebody to comment on it and the news and make it a little bit more magazine-y.
I mean, we saw those gaming TV channels try and die.
God, yes.
Because again, they were just.
Do you remember the other gaming shows that there was as well that were just awful?
Yeah,
like they would
There's one sort of like the Crystal Maze, and they have these champion gamers that you have to beat. And it's all aimed at kids, and it's all It's either aimed at kids or it's trying to copy the actual news or the actual sports rather than just being its own thing. And I think that we've seen that. There was a really interesting article in Games Industry Biz this week that I saw, where they interviewed the one of the people who's involved with the gaming coverage that the BBC do, and they were saying any gaming article is by far the top read article on, I think it was one of the pages, by a significant margin, and yet it kind of remains this this weird kind of niche at that kind of mainstream level. But having said that, think about things like competitive play and mainstream. I think that the more games just do their own thing and they'll quietly be successful. So, for example, Pokemon is now an esport, and it's absolutely fantastic. And in fact, there's probably too much of it. I can't keep up. And it didn't happen in a big way. It's just, every couple of weeks, you've got the VGC, you've got Pokken, you've got the TCG, and you can just tune in and watch Worlds or watch Regionals. And that's kind of cool. Yeah. So, it's not, I think I mentioned this before on the podcast, I think my perception, much like the way that gaming has sort of not really been incorporated into mainstream, was that the backs of newspapers would have gaming pages in, is not.
I know,
happening
but
like that.
it's just one of these things. If you're looking for it, you can find it, and I suppose that's what the internet is for. It's like, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a little tough to sort of pigeonhole this as a success or not a success. Esports is a thing. It's definitely a thing. It's just, it's not in your face. It's like, say, football, because I would say that there's no when it comes to community, things like going to a physical place and going to support our team and going things like that becomes more tribal. Yeah. Whereas within the gaming community, there are tribes, absolutely, but they're little gaming communities, and everything is so internety that people burn bridges, people jump ship so much more that I think there's almost a lack of loyalty, perhaps.
Yeah,
if that's a little, yeah,
or just lack of. There's no, it doesn't manifest itself physically. Well, certainly not in our corner of the world where we don't, especially do huge conventions and things like that. Okay, so to round us off, we've been walking for a while. Thinking about casting aside all ideas of realism, if you could manufacture or insert one thing into gaming, the future of gaming, as pathetic, petty as you like, minor innovation, what would you make happen in the future of gaming?
What would I make a petty? I think
it didn't have to be petty, but not necessarily a big idea. Just like I'd like Bruce Campbell in Mortal Kombat. And then it has to happen. I can go. I've got something if you want to think.
Okay, yeah, I think maybe, let's give me an example of one of the things that you would like to see. Yeah.
Okay, one of the things I would like to see, and I've harked on about this in the pages of that guy's .co.uk, is given the popularity of kind of customization and cosmetics, right? So we've seen an explosion in cosmetics as DLC, and famously character creators are arguably the most fun part of some parts of the games. But to my mind, we've taken a step backwards in some respects, and for a very small period on the original Xbox, you could upload your own soundtracks that would then play in the game.
Yes.
And it was actually phenomenal, Richie. Because
phenomenal. I fucking agree with you. I think
because I had this CD. I think you had to put it on a CD and put it in, and it had what did it have? It had One Winged Angel. It had Carmina Burana, and then I was driving around in whatever GTA it was, and that was playing on the radio. But it wasn't. You could say, why don't you stick some headphones on and turn the...
Yeah. It was not the same. Yeah.
No, it was just integrated, and at the time, similar to your idea about what the world was a platform. So my extension of that, kind of having your own music in games, would, similar to your 2005, what if the world was a game idea, would be that if you... across games, you could either choose to play my own soundtrack or whatever, or play the game's official soundtrack, where they brought musicians in for and probably paid a lot of money for, and planned specifically how the music works. But fine, you want to fuck all that off with having your own soundtrack. But then you could choose which tracks played during different emotions. So it'd be like, what track do you want to play when things are scary? What track do you want to play when things are epic? What track do you want to play when your health is low? And you could set like these little playlists. And so that's what I'd insert into the future.
Yeah,
phases.
Spotify integration. I think.
Bringing some of those tools back that we had in the past, and I really thought they were going to take off, but unfortunately didn't.
Yeah, I mean they never did anything with that. Because I don't remember this from GTA. I remember in Road Rage, not Road Rage. What was the car Namco one in PS1?
Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer. Yeah, you could take the CD out and you could put your own CD in, and you could still play the game, but you had a different soundtrack in. So like, I think at that time this is really, really telling. I was playing Ridge Racer, but to Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, you know. That's you know, and that's the sort of stuff. But yeah, no, like GTA has that wonderful radio system. Like, oh my god, how great would it be to be able to choose the tracks that went on? You don't need the announcer to announce the tracks. Absolutely not. It doesn't matter. But to have those adverts and the little bits playing in between with your own soundtrack, man, that would be amazing. I think that's a really, really good addition to what the future in games should be.
Yeah.
I don't know how to top that, man. That's because I'll be honest. Like you know what I'm like. When it comes to like soundtracks and video games, I tend to not even pay attention. I will happily play a game on mute. You know, I'll be sitting playing. More recently, I've been like having Spotify on the background playing like World of Warcraft, just because all they have is the ambient music, and that's great, that's fantastic, but fuck it, as long as I can still hear my character doing something and listen to music, yeah, that's good. But yeah, like you're saying, being able to choose cues, or the game being able to tell, you know, Spotify or something, this is about to happen, maybe get something foreboding coming up, or fucking tie it into new releases or some shit like that, you know, or tie it into
download the curated playlist for Resident Evil 8 by whatever, Lady Gaga.
Yuck. Okay, hell.
I know. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. Man, that's really, really tough. That's a really tough one to follow, because I love that idea. I think that's really, really great.
It can be as big and small as you like.
Yeah,
something
I know.
That annoys you.
Something that annoys me.
That you don't want to change.
I suppose it is the fact that there is version exclusivity.
Good luck. Well, I mean, it's your wish, so yeah, done. Okay.
Yeah, because that really, really bothers me, and I suppose it's quite topical as well, because Kingdom Hearts has just been released on PC. Now, this was a game that came out on the PS1, PS2, sorry, and basically I played it through, completed it. I don't have a PS2 anymore, so I haven't been able to play that game. Now, it came out in the PS3, or there was a remaster on the PS4 or something stupid like that, but yeah, I mean, is it worth buying a console system for one hit of nostalgia? No. Is it more sensible for a games company just to make it accessible on many platforms? Yes. And the worst for this is probably Nintendo, because it's not even about version exclusivity, it's about exclusive... I can't say that word.
I know.
What's the synonym of it?
Specificity. Probably doesn't help.
It doesn't help, no. Version uniqueness, version snowflake, platform snowflakeism. Yeah, but basically, they do it for their own fucking platforms, and they block out games from previous platforms. We've talked about, like, what is it? Mario Galaxy only just came out in the Mario Pack at Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, why is that game not being able to be played, continue to be played? You know?
Yeah.
And it's just fucking nuts. Back compatibility is a big bugbear, definitely, and removing perhaps that in general, just being able to play games. Like, if somebody brings out a new platform, you better fucking say it has all of the back catalogue as well. You know?
Why would you? Yeah, I mean, I think it's less key for PlayStation, Xbox side of things, but obviously for Nintendo, it works.
And of course with PC, you do have like issues with like games that are meant to run on Windows 95 and shit like that, you know. But there are companies like GOG, which I've mentioned like 9 times today, who do
unofficial sponsor.
yeah. Forget you under Net or Ultra Net, Ultra Tech, whoever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they are like going into those games and making them, future compatible. What's the word I'm looking for? Current, not future. Present day playable. Fucking hell. If only there was a term for this. Oh dear.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that's probably my biggest bugbear, or gear grinding, whatever you want to call it. The thing I want to fix is back compatibility / platform exclusivity.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You just have a whatever. Once you buy the game once, you don't have to buy it 100 times. Resident Evil 4.
Yes.
Just, you see, you've got that.
No. I'm not against that. No. Like, if you're going to release a game, release it every platform. You know, that's absolutely fine. Like, if you want to have 19 different versions of Resident Evil 4 like everyone else, I'm fine with that. That's cool. You know, that is your choice to spend your money in that way. Perfectly fine.
I mean, it's your way. I mean, because seeing the sales figures, recent sales figures that were going around about how ridiculously successful Super Mario 3D All Stars was, and that, and I absolutely love this. I've been tweeting about it as much as I can. The fact that, despite the fact it gets no coverage, no one's doing continual coverage of it, no one's doing articles about it, Mario Kart, consistently Mario Kart just ticks along in the background, outselling almost everything continuously. No marketing, isn't discounted to buggery, or you can't find a copy of Mario Kart 8 for probably less than 30 quid, and it just trundles along in the background. Absolutely love it. So obviously it's a strategy that works, but it's your wish, and so there we go, it's happened. Future and backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
Done.
Mario Kart on all platforms.
Please.
Yeah. I'm down, So yeah. Is that all we have to say about the future of games?
Yeah, I'm not too convinced we talked much about the future of games, but
no, I think we fucking dwelled in nostalgia. With our stagnant fucking stone cold takes.
I wish there was the Nightmare Creatures 3. That guy's a maniac.
Why'd he bite me?
Why'd he bite me?